And then we just kept pivoting. We failed a ton of times, tried a lot of different products. And then in, I want to say 2014, we made the move into organic popcorn. And that was, kind of a game changer for us.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Charles Coristine, President and CEO of LesserEvil. Charles, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, man, it's the Made in America podcast. So we always start off with the same two questions, Charles. What do you make?
What do you make
and why do you make it? There you go.
I would say we make organic, fun, kind of healthy oil snacks. And why do we make it? I think someone needed to put a healthier spin on packaged snacks. And I think part of the reason why we made it is because I needed to find something fun to do with my life.
Listen, having fun and making healthier snacks is definitely a good thing. And I definitely want to get into that stuff, but I really like to always start with sort of like the background and how you got into manufacturing and the history there. So maybe share with the audience, how we got here.
So LesserEvil existed before I bought it. It was started by Gene Hackman and Jim Kramer back in kind of the mid 2000s.
Gene Hackman and Jim Kramer, like the Gene Hackman and the Jim Kramer?
Yeah, the
really?
Night, yeah. And they co-packed their snacks. So they were made for whatever. If you don't know, co-packing is when someone else makes your snacks, and they have large scale or whatever, and they run a bunch of snacks for a bunch of different manufacturers.
So just real quickly, in a co-packing scenario, does that mean they came up with the formulations and then had the co-packer?
Yeah, exactly. They come up with an idea. Their idea was like a maltitol popcorn.
What?
A maltitol pop. So maltitol was, you remember the Atkins diet?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very similar to what the keto diet is. So maltitol was like a carb blocker. So you would eat. Do you remember Olean potato chips?
I do not, but let's pretend.
Olean potato chips you would eat, and you would have kind of a visceral, like a.
The Olean was supposed to like make you feel full or something like that. Is that?
No, I think it was like it coated the lining in your stomach so you wouldn't absorb the carbohydrates. So anyways, they came up with this snack. It didn't really work all that well. It wasn't a great value proposition, and they ended up selling it in 2009. There was a father-son team that took it over for a little while, but they didn't realize how expensive it was to play in the snack category, so they wanted out. So we got in, realized... I realized that it was kind of in dire straits. It was getting discontinued everywhere. Was
it always called LesserEvil?
It was called LesserEvil.
Okay, so the name is the same. Okay.
Yeah. And I figured that if we didn't become vertically integrated, if we didn't take on our own manufacturing, we probably weren't going to survive. So it was probably not the best move because I had no idea what I was doing in terms of manufacturing. But at that point, I had left Wall Street and I had told everyone that I was going to do this silly thing. I'm sure everybody thought I was crazy. So I was going to go down.
You're going down with the ship. The captain's going down.
I had to. So we opened up a small factory. I think the first factory was about 5,000 square feet. My partner was the perfect partner to do it because he was an engineer by background. And so he figured out we bought some new equipment, we bought a lot of used equipment, and we took a shot at it, and we kind of started figuring it out and enjoying it.
So let's just rewind for a second here. So how did you get from Wall Street? You were a bond trader, is that right?
Bond trader, yeah.
So how did you even find the company? Like, what's the story of like? I mean, I don't know. You're just trading bonds, and all of a sudden you're like, let's buy a snack company.
So 2008 had happened, and interest rates had gone to zero. And there wasn't a lot of volatility in the market. So trading bonds wasn't as exciting as it was. Plus, I was kind of burnt out because I'd done it for 20 years. I'd lived in Manhattan. I was commuting into Manhattan every day, and so I was kind of crying out for a change. I lost my train of thought here.
And then how'd you find the company?
So moved to Stanford, working for a kind of private equity backed firm, and a friend of a friend's father was the guy who bought it from the Hackmans and decided he was done with it. And I kind of liked the name or whatever. He had some snacks in the back of his car. I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting. And we started talking, and I said, you know what, I'll give this a shot.
So it was like a friend of a friend, and you're like, hey, what the heck?
Yeah.
And so your partner, Andrew, he went into it with you right from the beginning or came in later?
I bought it before. I think I bought it in November, and he came on board in, I want to say maybe December. You know,
right, quick.
I had said, hey, I bought it. He wasn't working at the time. He had just gotten out of finance, and he said, he raised his hand and said, I'll do this stupid.
And so the snacks that they were making, totally different than what you guys are making today?
Totally different.
So the name remains, and the category is sort of
it's a totally different company.
Totally different company.
Yeah.
So what was the company, and what made you pivot to popcorn and like just kind of?
They did do popcorn, but it was like a better for you than Frito-Lay. It wasn't really resonating. You know, it
didn't really have its own market position. It was sort of not quite this, not quite that.
It was a potato French fry that was, you know, kind of fried, but it just wasn't resonating with its consumers. So we figured we needed to try something. But what had happened, if you want to get technical, is that they had spent a lot of money because they were well funded, and they had distribution all over the country. And in food, there's some major food distributors that are extremely hard to get into. And what they had was they had distribution in all these different warehouses of these key distributors. So what I did, part of it was pretty junky what I got, you know, because it was like a falling knife. But another part was there was this distribution network that I could take advantage of. So what we found was, as we were getting discontinued, I went and begged some of the final retailers, like, please give me a shot. Let me come up with something, you know, save our shelf space. So we came out with a black bean, you know, Pop Chips was big at the time.
Yep.
So we came up with a black bean chia Pop Chip, which was pretty tricked up.
Yeah.
But it worked. You know, we got some distribution with Whole Foods, with Wegmans, with some others, and we were able to save all those distribution spots that we were about to lose. And then we just kept pivoting. We failed a ton of times, tried a lot of different products. And then in, I want to say 2014, we made the move into organic popcorn, and that was, you know, kind of a game changer for us.
So I think there's a lot people can learn from that from like a business perspective. You talked about failing a lot. So, I mean, talk about the sort of that process of, okay, you understand you've got this distribution network. I guess you must have thought that there was room in the market for a healthy snack. I mean, was that what was like the underpinning idea of like, hey, we've got distribution. You're not going to be Frito-Lay or maybe you are. I don't know. Okay,
probably not.
Right. Yeah. So did you have a view of, there's a spot in the market we can take if we can just figure out how to fill it?
Exactly. And the market's always right. So one thing I did learn as a bond trader was I made a lot of mistakes, but what makes a decent trader is you get out of your mistakes really quickly, right? And problems happen when you stay in a trade too long.
Okay.
So very similar to that, I kind of brought that mentality. It's like, okay, this isn't working, but I learned something from this failure, there was something in the snack that I liked that I transferred to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and then we kept refining it. And I think the retailers respected us.
I was trying to figure out how did you keep the retailers hanging on?
You know what? There are certain retailers that are like a test lab, and they actually love innovation, right? And they're crazy enough because consumers come in and they're like, what are we going to find here? And so they liked the fact that we kept on coming back with different stuff, you know, and they kept letting us, you know, continue to try to come up with new things.
Is it, there's so much I want to ask, but you had said you went to the retailers to try and like have them give you another shot. Like you went through the relationships that existed with the business you bought, and you were able to have enough, I don't know, I guess my mom would say chutzpah, to like just sort of go there and really press them, and they listened to you?
I remember like yesterday, two retailers in particular, Wegmans and ShopRite, were like the two last ones standing from the old brand. And I was summoned to both of them. One was, you know, they were going to discontinue.
I got what you.
The other one was very upset that we had changed the pack size on part of the bags and not on others, you know. So he thought was giving him a back-ended price increase, and I hadn't told him, and I had no idea what I was doing. So that was pretty scary. I had never been talked to like that before. But the Wegmans one was really good. The guy's name was Joe Pucci, and he looked at me and he kind of saw that I was a deer in headlights, and he, you know, had mercy on me, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna give you another shot. You need to come up with something pretty quick though. You got, you know, 3 to 6 months, otherwise we're kicking you out. So that was kind of my first break, and so I went to them with my black bean chia chips, and he actually thought it was a pretty good item.
Really?
Yeah, and he thought I was crazy.
Did it sell through?
It did well. It was probably in Wegmans for probably 3 years or something, 2.5 years.
And is that, I mean, so is that like the lifespan of a snack? Like, do they turn over like that typically?
Yeah, some of them don't even last that long.
Really?
Yeah.
So what happened, just to circle back around for a second, what happened with the guy that thought you were backhanded price increasing?
I told him I had no idea what I was doing, and I
straight up
apologized profusely, and he believed me.
He believed you?
Yeah.
Well, because it was true. So
it was
it's easy.
true, yeah.
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 So how'd you get to the, so actually let me ask this question. You're innovating all this stuff. You're a bond trader, not a snack food designer. How are you coming?
I was really into it because, as I said, I was pretty stressed out on, so I was looking for reasons to change my lifestyle, and I had gotten really into meditation. I had gotten really into organic food. So it was kind of like I was really a believer in this whole thing, and I was willing to try all the things. Like when we were doing coconut oil, I was like coconut oil pulling at the time, like.
What does that mean?
So if you put coconut oil in your mouth and you rinse with it, what it does is it takes all the toxins out of your, basically out of your mouth. Out of your tongue or whatever.
Yeah, I got it.
So you should try it sometime.
It's called, what is it called?
Oil pulling.
Pulling.
Pulling, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try that, oil pulling.
Yeah.
So you were
I was
really
living
into
the
stuff.
lifestyle. So I knew what chia was because I was putting chia in my smoothies.
Yeah.
So I was trying all the things that I was doing myself.
Not to be confused with the chia pet. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
So you're trying all this stuff, and then how did you get to popcorn?
Well, because they had the popcorn, that maltitol popcorn. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what's the, gimmick's probably not the right word, but what's sort of the differentiator in the LesserEvil? Actually, really quickly, I mentioned this to you before.
Yep.
We've had foods on the show before and great foods and beverages and stuff. But when people have heard, I don't know how, that this was on the schedule, some people saw it in my calendar or whatever, multiple people reached out and were like, they're bringing samples, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I told you this before.
I brought you a box.
And yes, absolutely. Yes, Jess, thank you very much. That's for sure. Got a box. Although I wish you hadn't said that, because now when I tell the rest of the office you only brought a half a box, they're going to know I'm lying. But yeah, so I mean, and I told you I hadn't heard of it. Like, I'm really impressed with it. Like, how did you figure out that there was this place to be and popcorn? Like, why popcorn?
So I was at a yoga retreat at a place called Kripalu in Lennoxville, Massachusetts, and I was seeing this guy, John Bagnulo. He was a big-time nutritionist, and he knew that we were doing organic popcorn. And he said to me, he's like, you guys got to use raw organic coconut oil. And I was like, well, there's no way that's going to work. It's going to oxidize in the bag for sure, right? I mean, so anyways, he planted the seed. We came back and we started playing with coconut oil, and that was kind of what the perfect storm just happened, because he also said Himalayan salt's the way to go. I was using Himalayan salt at home, and I'm like, I can't believe I didn't even think about that. And then there was a bootable station at the same, like, it was like the perfect, it was just very synergistic, it all came. So I kind of put together this whole concept on basically a 1 week nutrition retreat, and it worked. It took off in a lot of these health food stores, the independents and stuff, and we saw the velocities were really good. So then we knew the popcorn was the way to go, because
and just the sell-throughs were huge, and it was just like moving.
Yeah, like our Chia Crisps, in stores would maybe move 7 or 8 units per store per week, and then all of a sudden we started seeing what this thing would move, and it was moving kind of twice what all our other snacks were moving.
Really?
Yeah.
And then you just started kind of like, is this the,
this is the flagship? Yeah.
The flagship is like, it's just called the Himalayan pink salt
popcorn. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's just other flavors off of that.
Yeah. So then once we knew that coconut oil was really working, then we moved into extra virgin avocado oil, and then we moved into grass-fed organic ghee. So we knew that the oil was a big deal, because all the other competitors were using vegetable oil, and I'm sure we'll get into vegetable oil.
I'm about to ask you about that in a second here.
Yeah, so it was a big point of differentiation, and there was no other real organic brand. So we had a real nice value proposition there, and being vertically integrated. Sorry if I'm hopping around here.
No, please.
We were able to produce. When you have a co-packer, there's a whole layer of cost that you add on. So when you're vertically integrated, we save, we're probably saving 20 margin points. So we could pass on those savings. So we're selling organic, better for you, better oils, now even biodegradable packaging at the same price as our competitors were selling their popcorn. So,
which is because of the vertical integration. So I'm going to pivot from the snacks to that in 1 second, but we're talking about food, so I'm having a hard time getting off of it. But so is the coconut oil better than, it's the flavor and the health benefits that people like?
It's the flavor. Well, the flavor, if you cook with coconut oil, it can be overwhelming.
That's why
you cook chicken in coconut oil. It's like, wow, everything tastes coconut.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not something I love. I love cooking in, but for whatever reason, I think it's because the fats on coconut on popcorn is incredibly good.
And that's the key.
And that's the key.
So just do a little quick thing about the vegetable oil, because I mean, having looked at it, you guys sort of brand around the stop the oil spill, I think is kind of one of the phrases you guys use. And I was just telling you before the show that, I don't know, in my own mind, vegetable oil was good for you, right? I don't know. I don't know. It says vegetable. Maybe that's what it was.
Vegetable sounds good.
But apparently it's not.
It all has to do, there's a multitude of reasons, and I don't want to get too technical, but it all has to do with the omega-3 6s relationship. And vegetable oil is extremely high in omega-6s. And typically in a Western diet or in any diet, you're meant to have a ratio of 1-to-1 between omega-3s and omega-6s.
Omega-3 is like the fish oil stuff, right?
Well, fish is very high in omega-3s.
Right.
That's why, a lot of people eat fish.
Right.
But if you eat a lot of vegetable oil, that ratio is like 20-to-1 omega-6s to omega-3s. And it causes a lot of inflammation, a lot of chronic inflammation, a lot of weight gain. I think I should just chart in there. I think
it's like the third biggest thing driving obesity is like vegetable oil. Exactly. It's vegetable oil. It's crazy.
And it's in everything.
It is in everything. Yeah.
Actually, most people actually now say we put in sunflower, safflower, or canola oil, and what they do that is so they can buy whatever one's cheapest and use it as a processing agent.
Yeah. And was coconut oil more expensive?
Yeah, I would say organic coconut oil. It's gotten a little cheaper now for whatever reason. We can talk about deflation.
Yeah.
But it'd probably be 4 or 5 times the cost of vegetable oil.
So before we get into the manufacturing aspect, which I'm sure people are anxious for me to do, I do want to just ask something about your thinking around getting into such a difficult category. Anybody who watches Shark Tank hears about how hard, kind of the food snack category is. It's shelf space is super difficult. Distribution super difficult.
Yep.
It's hard to get consumers to see your product.
And there's that whole DSD model where, the big guys like the Campbells and the Snyders and they're one and the same now, and Frito-Lay, they have their own truck networks and they service all their own store. You can't, there's a high barrier.
And the high barrier to entry.
Yep.
Plus once they get like end cap space or market space, they like push their weight around.
Because I had a friend that guys actually take your stuff and put it on the bottom shelf.
Literally,
yeah.
So I had a friend of mine that started a health food snack company, and it started to get a little bit of traction, and it just never got over the hump because it's just like one step forward, two steps back. You have to have people going to the stores to make sure that your stuff gets put up in front because they'll push your stuff to the back. I mean, it's crazy.
I think I got really lucky. If you told me now, knowing what I know now, would I get back and do it all over again in snacks? I probably wouldn't do it, knowing how hard it is.
Right.
And that's just being an honest answer. And I think in any business, luck is part of it. I mean, obviously, luck is opportunity meets
skill, effort, hard work.
Yeah, but it's a really tough category.
Do you think something changed? I mean, do you think part of your success was just you didn't know better, so you just did what it took?
Totally. As I said, I had no idea what I was doing when I first got into it. Now knowing what I know, that would have been a very different decision. I would have let them keep that brand.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out. So let's pivot a little bit to that manufacturing component. So, a really strong business lesson here. So, the concept, I think the reason that people use co-packers is the idea that standing up your own manufacturing facility,
it's super expensive.
You got to buy the equipment.
You gotta get the permitting. When we moved to Danbury, there was no food manufacturing in Danbury. We had to, go through the mayor and get all it's a big deal.
And then you need like food safety inspections. You got to be careful. You need like the hair nets. You got to wear the gloves. I mean, it's one thing to have to deal with, quality in manufacturing, but when you put something inside people's body, and then not only that, but stuff that's not getting ingested like right away, like at a restaurant, you got to make sure nothing contaminated gets into the packaging.
Yep.
God forbid you end up with something in there that's bad. You got to do a recall.
We have audits.
It is just I mean, it's like it is not easy.
Sure.
And so to go and then to do it, when you don't even have scale yet, really, can be a real challenge. And so people use co-packers because then you're sort of fractionally paying
for it.
But you're saying it was less expensive to go through all the permitting, all the headache.
Yeah, part of the reason why that is, I mean, if I hadn't saved up some money, I wouldn't have been able to have done it, right? So I had saved some money over the years, and I was all in. So I put the upfront money up and went for it. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's a really tough thing to do. So I got lucky that way.
Oh, well, I mean, lucky, you could say that's like a risk. I mean, you put in all that work.
Yeah, I took a big risk.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Yeah. So what caused you to, you sat down and looked at the financial model and said, if we don't control our destiny here in terms of the manufacturing, like we can't get there?
So I think at the time we had our margins in our product were like in the high 20s or something like that. And typically just for your listeners, in food, you have to allocate a certain amount of money to what's called trade spend, right? And typically
Which is like marketing, kind of?
Kind of like marketing, yeah. Price discounts, end caps, all this stuff. So when you take...
It's sort of the techniques, the givebacks you use to get better shelf space or whatever. Yeah, essentially, you give the retailer more margin.
You're supporting the retailer in whatever ways they see, and that could be ads and all these other things. But they want probably 20% of what you're going to spend, what they're going to spend with you to go back to them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, it does make a ton of sense.
Take that off the margin. So if your
Which people wouldn't realize that, because if you're not in the food business, we don't have that experience with our customers, right? They don't go, sure, we'll pay you X, but like 20% of that's got to go to helping us advertise more, right?
Exactly.
It is a weird dynamic.
Yeah. So if you have 30-point margins, all of a sudden you have 10-point margins pretty quickly, and we probably didn't even have that. And then how are you going to even pay your SG&A and keep the lights on and stuff like that? So you figured out, okay, well, we've got to make this product ourselves because we're paying this co-packer a ton of money.
Because the co-packer's taking something, and you already felt that you had enough scale that even in a small 5,000 square foot facility, you would have enough.
We didn't have any scale.
You didn't have any scale.
But what I didn't realize, well, first of all, I had to fix the margin thing. But what I didn't realize at the time is when I opened the factory, which was probably a silly move, was that it was a license to innovate. Like that we could do anything we wanted with that thing, right? And not many people realize that. So we could fail over and over and over again with a co-packer that would cost you a fortune because you'd have to do a certain amount of line time. That's a day's worth of production. And what are you going to do with all this stuff? Oh, we don't like the way we taste. Let's try something else, and we just got really playful with it. So,
I mean, that's actually, I think, a really strong lesson here. One of the biggest things that you were able to do from an innovation perspective, you talked about that before, try something new, fail fast. With a co-packer or when someone else is doing the manufacturing for you, you need to commit a minimum run, right? Like, I mean, if you're buying a prototype from China or really from any factory, they're not going to just make one-offs for you. They're going to want a minimum run or charge you an arm and a leg for prototyping. You got to sort of prototype on your own. And if you wanted to go in on a Saturday and like experiment some stuff, you could do a quick run, shut it down, and then move on to something else.
Exactly right.
And so that's how you were able to get through all these failures.
All these failures.
Yeah. And it sounds like they weren't. I mean, I think entrepreneurs say the word failure, and people think it means it didn't work at all.
Yeah,
totally. It's not that it didn't work at all.
It's a good word. It's a good word. I don't mean to make it sound like a bad word.
No. I think it's terrific. So the vertical integration. What about trucking? You had talked about sort of Frito-Lay as its own, distribution, but you don't have your own trucks.
Well, now we do, but we don't use trucks to go service all our stores, right? So a lot of the smaller brands are the healthier brands, right? So stores like like Whole Foods, for instance, doesn't allow DSD distributors in there. They actually service it themselves, and they have distributors that drop off stuff at the back, in boxes, like a Unify or a KE services those. So that's where you typically start, with those kind of stores. Eventually you can find a partner brand that'll, like, some of these will partner with you, but we still haven't done that yet.
No. So in terms of that being so integral to your success, it was due to be able to drive margins and innovate. That's really what the vertical integration bought you.
And packaging and branding is obviously huge too.
So you package it, make it, the whole thing, soup to nuts.
We've got our own marketing team. We do all our own bag design, all our own design. Everything is done in-house, which saves a lot of money too.
And so how has the business grown since that original 5,000 square foot manufacturing facility?
This year will be close to 100 million in sales. We grow typically between 40 and 50% a year. We find that when we grow any faster than that, things start to wobble.
The wheels start to shake. It's a little bit hard to scale up.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you a question. When you're looking at that 40 to 50% growth, you've got to be facing a lot of the same challenges that I hear on this podcast all the time, which is people. Where do I find people to fill these jobs?
You know, it hasn't been a problem for us. I think we got.
By the way, it's a good thing no one else, other manufacturers aren't here because they'd be throwing things at you right now.
I think I say the word luck a lot. But Danbury was really good to us because it had a labor force that was pretty vibrant, and I think, we paid a little bit more than probably some of the, and I think we were a fun place to work. We really, right from the beginning, I would say we've gotten a lot better at culture, but we've always had kind of a playful approach to things, and people kind of like working where we work. And I think word of mouth has been a really amazing thing for us. Like we've got, wives bring their husbands, they bring their kids, and all of a sudden now we've got, some of these people at our factory have been there 7-8 years. They've got a bunch of family members that work, so it's a really cool environment.
That is a really cool environment. I mean, you say it's really fun. Are you guys doing anything to sort of foster that? What is it about culture? How do you think about that? And what do you do to proactively sort of cultivate it?
Because we've got our own warehousing, our own office, and our own factory, and we move people around a lot, and we don't, typically people can feel lost in a factory because management views them as a factory worker. And I think what we've done a really nice job at is we try to promote within, and we bring a lot of people in, that speak. We were going to talk about Spanish, that we have people in our front office now that are sitting with people that can speak both English and Spanish, and they're being trained in accounting. And these were people that were working on the line that had no accounting background. And the minute people see that that's possible, it brings a whole different kind of psychology to the workplace. So, people are like, there's people now that are taking CDL license and driving trucks that never did that before. And they're working in the warehouse. They're working on, if people believe they can do anything, it changes everything.
Yeah. And so they're looking around, seeing other people advancing their careers, doing things that they didn't know they can do, which shows company believes in them. The company gives them opportunity. And if you see other people around you doing that, that makes you feel good about coming to work. I mean, okay, so that all makes sense, but how do you foster that? I mean, is it happening organically? Do you guys have programs to sort of push that along?
I wouldn't say we have programs. I would say, we do a lot of stuff together as a team. So whether we have a gym in our facility, and we have yoga classes, and we did Zumba classes, and people would come over from the factory, at 3:00, you'll come into our gym now, and there's 20 ladies that are come fresh off the first shift, and they're working alongside you are, and then we actually, another great thing we've done is we brought bar manufacturing into our office because there's no space in the factory. And we bring all these people in that are used to running popcorn machines or extruder machines, and now they're running the bar machines, and they're eating lunch in the same cafeteria that we're all eating in. So it's just really cool. You'll see factory workers bring their families and come into the office and introduce themselves to people that are it's not a program. I think a program maybe wouldn't feel as authentic as we actually really like having them come in, and it feels really good, and they sense it.
And so obviously that's got to start at the top, Charles, right? I mean, that's not going to happen. And I mean, your passion's palpable. I can feel it in the room. So it must start there. And I guess, but a lot of people feel like they have that passion, but then they struggle to sort of curate it. In other words, it's easy to sort of your passion to lead when the thing's sort of manageable and smaller, but there's got to be people that work at this organization that barely have had any contact with you, right?
No, so everybody has contact with me.
Not the same as when it was 5 people, right? I mean,
I think the worm turns when there was a time where that I was stressed whether we were going to survive, right? And that's a whole different stress. And maybe I wasn't as approachable because I was dealing with, a lot of different things.
The weight of the world.
But I think as we found our groove, we realized that it was all the little things, and that if we just focused on the little things, that the big things would take care of themselves. And I think when I started, it was all about the big things, right? And then you start seeing some success and you start focusing on the little things, everything else becomes much easier, and you just kind of de-stress a little bit. And then it becomes much more playful.
What's an example of some little thing that you would say, the things you focus on to make it?
Yeah. So at the beginning, you're focused on paying the paychecks, and then
getting orders.
Yeah, getting orders. Exactly. And now it's like popcorn testing. Like we're like product quality is like everything that we're about. Like we're testing popcorn. We're looking at bilateral popcorn versus multilateral versus unilateral. And like, how big is the kernel? You know what I mean? And how much oil does it have on it? And do we like the mouthfeel? And all of a sudden, like we feel like we're putting out the best product. Is the packaging centered? Is this is a crazy example, but those are the things now that I'm much more focused on than I was ever before.
And when you're focusing on all those little things, who's kind of paying attention to those bigger things? Like, are we getting enough product out the door? Are enough packages getting
into the trucks? As the team gets bigger, you can start delegating a lot more things to people who are potentially better at you than those things. Like, I have my marketing girl here, and she's amazing. And I used to do a lot of the package design and a lot of this stuff myself, and I was terrible at it. Some of the stuff was okay.
Terrible
but,
might be a little bit aggressive. Well, maybe not quite as good as Caitlin is, but whatever. Yeah.
So now I let people do what they're good at, and right. And I'm kind of more of a facilitator. I try to basically find out where people are having problems, and I'll go in and try to help them solve those problems. But if they're not having problems, the key is kind of just to leave them be and let them do their own thing and let them have their own autonomy. Yeah,
and build off of that.
Yeah, and build off that.
So when you mentioned something before about about deflation, and I wonder, something we talk about with manufacturers a lot has been the challenges in sort of the market dynamics that shifted. Before COVID it was starting, but COVID obviously changed some stuff. Issues with sort of distribution, supply chain, shipping, and all that. Yeah. How does that impact you from the food side of things, and where do you guys see? You mentioned deflation, so I guess that means there must have been inflation to deflate.
Yeah, so we saw a lot of inflation at the beginning, especially with with shipping. Getting really, really, really expensive. We probably saw our container rates more than double.
That was for stuff coming in or going out?
That was stuff coming in. And obviously we get our popcorn here in the United States, but we get a lot of our commodities. The organic coconut oil doesn't grow in the United States, unfortunately. We have to get it from the Philippines or whatever.
And Himalayan sea salt, probably you can't get that from anywhere in the United States because, at least if you're going to call it Himalayan, probably, yeah.
So there was a lot of inflation. It was mainly freight driven. And to be honest, you were really worried whether you'd stay in stock. So you'd buy, we probably overbought in a big way. So you start tying up a ton of cash in your inventory position. Like my warehouse was just jam packed with stuff. Because I didn't want to being out of stock means you lose shelf space, right? Mm-hmm. And it hurt our financials, in 2020, because it was all about survival, right? And I wanted to thrive while other people were, particularly the people with co-packers, where, we can get into that, but some of the co-packers weren't taking care of the little guys at all. And they all went to the big guys, right?
One other reason that vertical integration helps.
If I could stay in stock, I wasn't so worried about the financials. I felt like I'd have a competitive advantage.
Was there a cash flow issue? Because you're just seeing inventory on the inventory balance sheet, inventory costs just going up, and so you're just sort of and you're
sitting on a lot more inventory, and and a lot more finished goods too. I was loading up. Yeah.
So you were doing the finished goods too. So you're getting it on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. And that seems to have gone backwards.
So I think that hurt a lot of people. I think a lot of people probably did what I did. And then the worm started turning when I personally believe, this is my own belief, is that when air travel started normalizing a little bit again, and we started allowing planes come in, into the United States from all over the world, a lot of that freight that had to go ocean all of a sudden started going back to air. And then you saw
a lot of freight through the air, because I think most of us think of freight on, especially international, on boats.
Yeah, a lot of it comes in on planes, and then even on commercial passenger planes. So when you take that out,
so during the COVID, when all the flights went way down,
and a lot of power in a few freight handlers' hands too. So they started gouging in a big way.
And so you think do you think they took advantage of the situation to raise prices even higher?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're saying that's starting to come down?
That's starting to come down. And now you see people that are sitting on, 3 years of bicycles and bicycle parts, all of a sudden now have to get out of So we're starting to see it in a lot of our inputs.
So are you bringing your inventory levels down?
Because now I feel like I have steady access. I can be much more just-in-time inventory than I was in the past.
Are you changing? Are you going to go back to how it was before, or are you sort of hedging a little bit on that?
I think I'm going to go back to where it was before. I think the world's normalized to an extent that I feel comfortable that I can order just what I need.
And so that deflation, you think it's going to make its way through the supply chain?
Exactly. I think that my margin profile this year and next year, because I'm locking into some commodity prices and in terms of contracting, is going to help out my margins for this year and the following years.
And so did that sort of supply chain margin increase result into like retail price increases, and are those going to be impacted?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we tried not to take a price increase. We did last year, and it takes, for whatever reason, when you have a distribution network, you have to give them warning. So it takes 6 or 7 months before those prices start to take effect. So we put a price increase into effect middle of last year, and it's just coming into effect now. So it's kind of like the perfect storm. My prices are going to go up 7%, and my commodity prices are starting to come down to where they were before COVID. So it's going to add that to my bottom line.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
So I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to flip a little bit to the future. How many people did you guys have on the LesserEvil team when you opened that first factory?
Less than 10.
Less than 10. You guys are like 225, 230 right now?
Yeah, 220.
5,000 square feet. I think you guys are in, 80,000 square feet?
Well, we've got, I want to say 80,000 square feet of finished good, space. And then we've got, a raw material warehouse, and we have a corrugate warehouse, and we have a factory. So all in, we're opening up a second factory. We're probably close to 200,000 square feet, maybe more.
Come a little bit of a way, haven't we, Charles?
Yeah.
So what's next in the plans for LesserEvil? I mean, I noticed we got the Spaceballs.
Yeah.
Bag of Spaceballs here. I'm looking to dig into that. Like, what's going on there?
So I think we talked about a lot of failures, and part of what I was doing wrong was I was going after smaller markets, and the percentage of people that really care about super healthy stuff is probably, 10% of the market or whatever. And I'd really focused on them. So I think now we're much smarter about looking at the larger addressable market and where we can make a difference in terms of, regular everyday people who want, healthy snacks, but really want something tasty. So, we know that the puff category is a very big category, particularly cheese balls, pirate's booty, that kind of stuff. So we've kind of done it with popcorn now, and we're going to go after a bigger market in terms of the pirate's booty market, but bring the same bells and whistles, the oils and the salts and the organic and the biodegradable packaging to that category, and we think that may work. So
talk a little bit more about just that last thing you just said. You were going at two small slices of the market?
Exactly.
So talk about that a little bit. You weren't thinking about what the TAM, the total addressable market was, and just going after like a small subcategory?
So do you want me to talk about brand evolution?
Yeah, please.
So, typically when you start a healthier brand, you typically deal with the kind of the natural side of things, which is, there's a smaller universe, right?
So the idea being, hey, our differentiator is we're gonna be the healthier version of whatever, and that's our big thing. People are gonna go to us for health reasons and health reasons only, and that's not big enough.
3,000 doors that cater to people like that, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you get good adoption in that, it kind of gives you a license to go after conventional grocery. So conventional grocery like Stop and Shop or ShopRite, those kind of guys. And then if you do really well there, then that gives you a license to go into mass. And then you think of mass as Target and Walmart and stuff. And you do really well there, that gives you the license to go into club, right? So as we've grown as a brand, we now have, as we deal with different partners, they have different needs, right? So a Whole Foods' need is completely different than a Walmart's need. So now what we do really well is we don't try to be everything to everyone. We try to be very strategic with our partnerships, but our partners are asking for different things, and we try to
you look at the partner as the retailer.
Yeah, and each retailer needs a different program. And so now retailers are asking for more mainstream things. So we talk about larger addressable market. So we come up with an idea like Spaceballs, which we think appeals to kids and families across the United States.
And so when you go to the retail partners, you're saying to them, hey, their goal is to drive traffic into the store and get people to buy as much as possible.
And they find out that we're vertically integrated, and that's a big thing for them. And they say, oh yeah, they say, hey, we love first to market opportunities. This is what we think our consumer wants. Can you make this? And if you can tell that, yes, you can, all of a sudden you become a totally different kind of partner than with someone who doesn't have manufacturing.
No kidding. So they'll come to you guys with an idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And what is it sort of in sort of what you do, or is it typically out of left field?
Well, it's formats and it's flavors and it's different pack sizes. So like there's retailers now.
Just get real quick. Formats, flavors, pack sizes I get, but format, flavor.
So format would be, okay, so a lot of these larger mass retailers, are competing against Costco in particular, so they want to have a lot of small bags in a pack. Something like that as an example. And we can say, okay, you want a 20 pack? We can make that for you. You want a 10 pack? We can make. You want a 30 pack? We can do that too.
I gotcha.
So they like that. And then they say, we really like what you did with those summer flavors. We want to have our own summer flavors. Can you do something different there? And we're like, yeah, we can do a different summer flavor for you. And then
so you'll get a retail partner that will want their own sort of custom
flavors. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So I mean, all roads lead back to this vertical integration, and it's just all about controlling your own destiny, basically. That's pretty cool, man.
It's really about providing delight to your partners, right? And doing stuff that they want. And, you do that enough and you develop a really nice relationship with them.
So here we are. You started on this journey in 2009?
No, I think it was 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're just crested past year. So November 2022 is 10 years.
Yeah.
This is the 11th year.
Yeah.
So we're looking back a decade in the books.
Yeah.
You seem pretty happy, I guess.
I'm so happy.
I guess bond trading is totally in the rearview mirror now.
Yeah. I was out for dinner in the city last night with a couple guys I used to work with, and they asked me like, "Hey, would you like to come back and do it?" I mean, there's part of me that misses that kind of, but I was like, no, I have no interest. I love what I'm doing, because you're making a difference in people's lives now, and that's tangible, and that you can take home every night.
So before I kind of flip us over to rapid fire round of questions and bubble up, I wonder if you just like talk on that for a second, because we've had the great privilege of talking to so many people that have been in manufacturing that have come from totally different places, and you here you are going from like bond trading, high finance. There's some excitement in trading, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a young man. It's an amazing thing to do when you're young.
Yeah, and now you're doing this, and like, what is it about manufacturing that's made you, because you're glowing, like what is it about it that's really kind of scratched that itch and made you so passionate about it? It's
a different kind of puzzle. And it's a puzzle that's like I said the word tangible before, but it's like you got something and you're providing delight to consumers. Like people will come to us, we'll be at trade shows, and they're like, "What you make really matters to my life. I eat your stuff and I bring it home and it's delightful." And you feel that energy. That's not something that you've felt on the other side. It's a really nice feeling.
That's cool, man. Well, listen, I'm a big fan. I'm so happy that you
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I'm going to flip us over to rapid fire round of questions. Are you ready?
Okay, I'll do my best.
Here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox.
There we go. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Dunkin'.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
Sports car.
Do you have a favorite business book?
I read a lot of business books. I should know. I should have one. Probably Lean Startup.
Lean Startup. That's actually a really good one. If you had to do something other than be president and CEO of LesserEvil, it could be anything in the whole wide world, what would you do with your time?
That's a really tough question. I've always thought I've thought about politics at some point. I think politics really needs to be cleaned up, and I just don't know if I'm ready for it, but maybe mayor of my town or something like that.
There you go. I think you'd be really good at it.
Thanks.
What's something, Charles, that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think's helped springboard you to all the success that you've had?
Failure is temporary. So is pain. You just get up and you just keep moving. And you keep moving forward. You can accomplish pretty much anything if you believe in yourself.
Amen to that. What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you went back and told young Charles and he'd listened to you, you think it'd make a real positive impact on his life?
I think I took myself too seriously when I was younger. And I think, life's not about taking yourself too seriously. You're not here for a long time. It's about relationships and connections and making people feel good. And I wish I had done more of that when I was younger.
Dude, amen to that. Charles, this has been a really, really great time. It's going to make for a great episode. Thank you so much for filling our snack closet and for spending your time with us. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.